welcome to Wealth Talks, where we talk about solutions, money, and other things that create wealth in your life. John, we've got a special guest here again today.
Yes, we do. Mom is here with us today, Michelle McPhee.
Hi there. And I understand
We're delighted to have you here.
I understand I get to be a guest a little bit more often on the show.
We're hoping, we're trying to entice you to be.
Well, I'm excited to be here.
Yes, well, you know, we've heard a lot of different ways to produce wealth in your life, and we've written articles about it and whatnot. And really, the accumulation of wealth is a very simple matter, as long as you understand that you've got to talk about time, compound interest, and the rate of return. And of course, along with that comes how much you're putting in on how much you're going to end up with.
Oh, absolutely. We have to work to produce something to start. Something never comes from nothing.
And yet the world kind of goes at it backwards, and we're told to that when we're young, we can risk a lot in order to get a higher rate of return. And yet we've proven that that is not necessarily true, John, because the savings rate is more important than the rate of return that you're earning over the first 25 years of an investment. And so that's kind of upside down. And so people take that advice and they get misled, and they tend not to be savers early in life and take higher risk. Then they end up in their fourth decade or fifth decade wondering why they only have $100,000 or $200,000 saved for retirement, when really they're going to need closer to $1 million, $1.5 million if they're really going to live comfortably and not run out of money before they die. Mm-hmm. So, Michelle, we recently heard a very good speaker who's been in our industry for 40 years, and he had some very good pointers. And I think you can share those with us today and our listeners, and we'll all come out better for listening to this advice.
Okay, so there's 4 stages or 4 levels that we have to go through in order to become it's just part of our stages of wealth development. And the first one is to protect. And you know, what you have, you need to protect what you have. And one of those things that we need to protect is our life value.
Yes.
And so we naturally do that with life insurance. You know, a young couple gets married, and, you know, there's this realization with many couples that, oh, if I lose your life, I'm going to have an economic loss as well. And so you want to protect that. And for pennies on the dollar, is that what it is?
Pennies
I don't
on
know.
the dollar.
If pennies on the dollar, you can have adequate protection to make that not even a factor. So that's really the first place we would need to start.
You know, I heard something really good about this protection the other day, Michelle, and it is the insurance that we sell is buying money. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We are buying money for the time that we're not going to be there, number one, and that's the protection issue. And number 2, we're buying money that we can use later on in our life, like John and I have talked about so many times on this podcast. So think of insurance not as life insurance, but as you buying money for pennies on the dollar today of what you're going to be able to access and pass on to someone else.
Mm-hmm. And then the next thing we need to do is to save. Now, it's interestingly enough, we'll get to the 4th one in a minute, but everyone wants to, I'm not going to say everyone, but a lot of people have the idea that they want to start with the end. And really we need to start with the end in mind, but not start at the end. So we see this in other areas where we see young couples getting married and they want a house that's just as big as the one that they just left from mom and dad.
Yes.
They want it furnished with as many things as mom and dad have. They want to be able to do all the things that mom and dad did and more, when they're just getting started. And it's like having an infant. You don't expect that infant to run a marathon. Maybe someday, but we got to start with the beginning. So protection is the first one, and then savings. And savings is important. Hey, do you guys ever talk about that on this show?
I think we've pounded this donkey long enough with the whip, but just to remind them.
Yeah, just as a reminder, and for those of you new listening to the podcast, we talk about the 10-20-70 rule. 10% is the minimum amount of your income that you want to be saving. So you split up your 100% of your income into these 10%, 20%, 70%. 10% to save, 20% to creditors. If you don't have any creditors, that means you could save up to 30%.
Yeah.
70% is the maximum to lifestyle.
Now, John, we always say the 10-20-70 rule, and that's a good formula to remember, but we have to remind you that if you're in your fourth, fifth, or sixth decade and you haven't been saving 10% since you were in your second decade, then you need to make up for less time. You've got to adjust your lifestyle to be saving 25, 35% of your income if you really expect to create an abundance that's going to supply you in retirement until the day you die. Yeah. And there's just no other way around it. There's got to be enough principal there to compound. Otherwise, you're trying to play a magic game that just doesn't work.
Yeah,
that's right.
And savings, it doesn't sound real exciting because, what do you want to do? Save or buy the newest electronic thing, or save or go buy, something exciting. But when we understand where to save, and if we can have the vision to save for the future and how we can even use that savings during our lifetime, then it gets to be, a little bit more exciting. So those are the kind of conversations we like to have with people about how they can save and yet still use it. So that's exciting. So number 1, protect. Number 2, save. And number 3, it's kind of a combination. It's either, if you've got debt, we got to consolidate the debt and get out of debt, because that is a constant drain on us. And it actually keeps us from saving more and being able to do more of the things we want to do in our life. If you don't have debt, then it's a time of building liquidity, because the more liquidity you have, the more you're going to be able to have opportunity to engage in that next step that everyone wants to do first.
And that's what we've learned from reading the shareholder notes of Jeff Bezos and Warren Buffett and some of these other people that have done very well with the liquidity that they have from shareholders. They talk about something called free cash flow and the volatility of money. And we've talked about those a lot, John. But, we always say, a lot of people would have started with paying their debt off first instead of savings. But notice savings came first here. Well, that's critical. And then protection was before that. And John, you've worked with many, many clients and shown that if they pay their debt off and start first, like Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, and some of these other people say, all they're going to have is zero when they get done paying their debt off. But if they will start with protection and savings and then debt consolidation and repayment,
then you're ahead of the game. You still are at zero when the debt is paid off, but you have an asset that's appreciating. It's, you can be 3-4 years ahead of where you would have been otherwise in many cases that we've looked at.
That's so amazing. True. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then, Michelle, the last fourth one that everyone gets so excited about and all the whistles and bells are attached to.
Okay, so can I have a drum roll? Investing.
Everyone wants to invest.
Yeah, and they want to invest first.
It sounds sexy. Why not?
Yeah,
It's
So there is a proper place for investment, but first protect yourself, protect your family, have your savings, have your debt eliminated, have liquidity, and then you'll be able to be more wise about how much you can invest and what to invest in. It's amazing how many opportunities will come to you when you have money to invest. If you're scrambling to get some money together to invest, there's all kinds of things that will quickly take your money, and you don't get a choice. You don't have the opportunity to choose wisely to do your investment. And investments, I'll just say not all of them are cracked up or what they're cracked up to be. People lose a lot of money investing. Now, not everyone does. People gain a lot of money investing too, but you have to invest wisely. Doing these other things first, protecting, saving, eliminating debt, gaining liquidity. Those are the early steps that will help you in your money management activities that will help you to be a wise investor.
Well, there was a study done by Washington State University, and, we have a high probability of every American has a high probability of becoming one of the 1% in the United States. That means the top wage earners in the United States. That's a huge statistical advantage that we have being Americans over the rest of the world. However, there are very, very few people who get to that level of income that keep it. It's less than 1 out of 10 that are able to keep it. And so that's because they didn't start with the protection first. They started with the investments. They were able to make a lot of money, like you said, some people do.
Sometimes you'll strike it lucky.
But there always are those market returns that come on average 8 to 10 years, and 40 to 45% of your profits are wiped out. Now, that's why it's so important to protect and save first, because if you have the protection and one of those market corrections comes along, you don't lose and start all over at that point. And that's what so many people don't understand about investing. The word investment itself means 100% chance of losing everything that you've put in. And that's why protection is so important. That's why we start there.
And when people do start investing, some of the returns on investments, I think of real estate, other things, on a day-to-day basis, those investments aren't necessarily giving high rates of return. Oftentimes it's when those properties are liquidated and, you've got a market thing going on that people can really pull ahead. But on a day-to-day basis, the returns can be relatively low. And so for someone to invest in real estate with a relatively low return, while they have outstanding debt at 16, 17, 18% interest, come on, folks, let's do the math there. That is going in the hole. Yeah. And so there's another example of why it's important to follow these steps and not put the cart before the horse.
Yeah, and like number 3, liquidity there. Step number 3. If we try to put step number 4 before that, the debt elimination, like you just said, even just the liquidity. Being in real estate, sometimes you need to have extra liquidity outside of real estate so you can afford to keep the real estate long enough so it actually makes a profit.
Let's talk about real estate here, because this is what all the gurus teach you. Go out, go into debt, and invest in real estate. And then once that property starts turning profit, you leverage that piece of property to get liquidity, number 3, so that you can go into debt some more. So that hopefully you'll be able to get enough money to save eventually. And then after you get all done, if a market correction hasn't come and wiped out your profits by that time, then you should think about what you can do to protect that in the long run, like maybe buying an annuity or something like that in the future.
Totally backwards.
It's totally upside down. But this is so true about so many things in life, Michelle. We saw that as we began to meet each other and to think about, hey, this might be a spouse that we could live with for the rest of our life. But we had already set up the levels that are required to make a healthy relationship happen before we ever met. And that was, we were committed to certain values. We had stability in our own lives. You were already stable in your job. I was already stable doing what I was. And then that allowed us to appreciate each other. And then that allowed us to really be free to be romantically attached to each other. Now, what does the world usually do? The world really bumps us completely upside down again.
Yeah, they want that, what was it like when you first met? And, if the bells and whistles didn't go off, this romantic engagement, then, it's, pass on by. But really being a stable person, having commitment in your life, being stable, and then being able to appreciate the other person for who they are can allow you to let go or to free up those romantic feelings.
And that romanticism then lasts.
Yes.
Because
you can choose to keep it up,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Because all those other things are stable. You've got a good foundation.
Yes.
You've got a good foundation. So you don't want to start just on romance. That doesn't last too long. Got plenty of divorces to prove that. You don't want to start at the investing level either. Now, granted, many people have done well in real estate and many people have lost their shirt. So you decide which one, you've got a choice here. You could do well, you could lose your shirt. If you do it in the right order, you have a much better chance of coming out well.
Well, we're always talking about both.
Yeah.
But if we start with the protection, save, consolidate, liquidation, and then invest, we will be able to enjoy both. But if we start out without protection but investing first, we could end up with nothing.
That's right.
And we just want to protect from ending up with nothing, because so many Americans are ending up with really nothing to live on in their retirement. I don't know how many times that I've talked to someone that has bought a policy 30, 40, even 50 years ago that says, this is the best investment I ever made in my life. They didn't buy it for an investment. They bought it for protection way back when.
Yes.
And now they look and see, man, this was actually the best investment I ever made.
No, it's not investment though,
But
right?
exactly. But it turns out to be, because every investment can give you a rate of return if the market does well. Few investments can promise that your principal won't be lost, but you can figure it and statistically average it out so that you can see that you get a rate of return plus you get the return of your principal. But there's only one thing that gives us mortality credits, and that's life insurance. And those mortality credits that come with life insurance, no other investment can match. And that's what makes it stable. And it's not even a rate of return. It's a number that an actuarial computation figured out based on how many people are going to die in 100,000 people.
So I was going to ask you, mortality credits, that's a really technical term. Can we put it into simple terms for...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So John,
yeah, let's have
What
something
does that
simple.
mean, really?
John, you're in your
Layman
mid-20s. You're in your mid-20s, right?
Yes.
The probability of you dying tomorrow is very, very rare. You could.
True.
And your life insurance company would pay out its death benefit to your mom and I. However, the probability of dying is going to be more like when you're 90. That's what the actuarials know. And so all the people that are paying premiums on that policy until 90 pay your death benefit if you die tomorrow. But it's overfigured, and so everybody gets this little credit every year the longer they live and outlive that probability of death. And so that's what life insurance is built on, and it's an actual number that the actuaries come up with, knowing exactly how many people out of 100,000 are going to die this year.
So that allows them to provide the guarantees that they do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
There we go. So the mortality credit is a number the actuaries come up with, and it allows them to give us guarantees in whether it be in insurance or in annuities if it's on the other end of the spectrum for an older person looking for an income.
Yes.
That's what that term means. Very nice.
So that's why we really focus on life insurance and annuities for some things, because it is so important that we lock into those mortality credits, because that is what's protecting us from the market influence and everything else that attacks investments. Now, once we get there, we can still get those mortality credits and make investments with the
Certainly.
savings that have occurred and built up inside the policy. And we specialize in that. And that's why we like the life insurance product.
Did you just say we were talking about both again?
Yes, I did. So
And this sounds like, okay, so I'm talking back behind the scene here a little bit, but this is something you're going to talk about at the Wealth Summit coming up October 12th, 13th, 14th, isn't it?
it
Yes,
is.
it
Is how to invest in those later years, or how to receive greater benefits from your life insurance policy during retirement years, and how that all plays, right? Is that
That's right.
okay? And
Yes.
John, you're specifically preparing a session for that at the Wealth Summit.
Yes, we're preparing some examples. You know, in 2015, we wrote the book Retirement Curveball, and we included several different things that people are facing as they're approaching, whether it's retirement or whether they're just wanting more passive income and financial security in their golden years. And we put a lot of those into the book Retirement Curveball. Here recently, we've published some information and content that goes even beyond that. In fact, we're probably going to be updating the book, and we're
Oh,
going to
my.
be sharing some of that information and different examples at the Wealth Summit.
Okay,
That'll be
so
wonderful.
I'm looking forward to seeing
Yes.
that, because sometimes you get so close to the forest you don't see the trees. Or
Yes.
is it so close to the trees? I don't know which way it is, but
It can go both ways.
sometimes I feel that way. And so I'm really excited to hear and see what you're going to present on that, because I think that's going to give me better vision for the future.
That's right.
And John, we always get into these podcasts and we forget to ask our listeners, please shoot us an email. Please give us a phone call. Let us know what you would like us to discuss on this podcast, because it's important that you get your questions, your concerns, your ideas, and your thoughts addressed. And that's what this podcast is for. So please shoot us an email at team@life-benefits.com or give us a call at 702-660-7000. We love to hear from you. We get a lot of feedback, but we sometimes forget to ask for it. So please just go ahead and give us a ring or shoot us an email.
Yes, please. And while we're on the subject today of the 4-step process to building wealth: protect, save, consolidate, and liquidation, getting rid of debt, and fourthly, investing. While we're on that topic, if you would send us an email with your thoughts, those of you listening to this today, what examples have you seen in your life of this process at work? Or what went wrong when the process was backwards? It could be in your life or an example that you've seen in your friend's life. But if you could share those with us, that would be wonderful. We'd love to share those in turn with the other listeners here on the podcast.
You know, I just want to end up today that every one of us knows some adolescent that wishes that they were 30 years old. And everybody here knows somebody in their 70s that wishes they were 20. We cannot reverse the order and sequence of things that are supposed to happen in life. Otherwise, we lose the value that we could create. Michelle, at the Wealth Summit, you talk about the levels of learning, and it has to be in a certain order. You cannot start with abstract thought when you haven't laid the foundation of what needs to be there before you can have abstract thought. This 4-step principle is the best way to guarantee that the wealth you build will be there for you, will be there for your spouse, and will be there for future generations.
That's right. Real quick, also before we leave, I want to let you all know the wealth details on the Wealth Summit. The dates are going to be October 12th and 14th this year.
12th, 13th, and 14th.
12th, 13th, and 14th. 12th through the 14th. That's right. And the website is wealthsummit.net. You can also call our office to register, 702-660-7000. This will be the last Wealth Summit, the 3-day Wealth Summit that we're planning. We're planning something different for 2019. So we want to be sure you get a chance to be part of the Wealth Summit experience. Again, October 12th through the 14th this year, 2018.
Well, Michelle, thank you for joining us today. Can we ask you to come back next time too?
If I get to choose the topic,
okay.
Can we talk about investing next time?
Absolutely.
Certainly.
Okay,
That'd be
everyone
great.
loves to talk about investing, number 4. So I want to talk about investing next time.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Until next time then, where we talk about solutions, money, and other things that create wealth in your life. You have a great week. We'll be back right here next Wednesday.